everyone, it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be making 26 Christmas cards using Michael's Recollections Save Freeze 6x6 paper pad, as well as some of the stickers that go along with this set. So I did pick this set up on Black Friday at Michael's and it was on sale. It was 50% off of the regular price, and I ended up getting the 50% off plus a teacher discount of 15% off. So I ended up paying for everything that you see $7.20. So I really couldn't resist it, and I love making Christmas cards. So I decided to pick this up and make some Christmas cards with it, and I was able to use up a whole 6x6 paper pad. I used some of the stickers in the set. You can see all of the pretty Christmas papers that are included in this pad. There are 2 sheets of each one of the papers, and there's a total of 24 sheets in this collection. And this paper pad, it does include some cutouts. It does also have some tags, which I didn't use all of it, meaning I did not use all of the tags and all of the cut aparts. Some of those pages I just used the pattern paper on the back side. So for the cards that I'm going to make today, some of them will be duplicates. So there's a total of 26 cards that I'm making, and 5 of them will be duplicates, and then the remaining 21 will be single designs. So I'm going to be bringing in some of the stickers, and the sticker pack, it actually includes some sentiments, there's some border strips, some of the circles I don't use. There are also some cute little snowmen that you can make fun scenes. There's some tags which I will be using. It also includes some more sentiments, as you can see here. And some of these tags I'm not going to be using. I do use that large wreath, and here's some tags. So some of them I will be using on my cards to make cute little scenes, but other stickers I will just use when I'm wrapping my Christmas presents and use them as tags. I also picked up this pack of ephemera, and this actually is a sticker. They have an adhesive backing that you can pull back and use these as stickers on your cards. So for my cards, I was going for a very simple look. I wanted to only use a few supplies. I mainly used only the paper and the stickers in the collection. However, there are a few cards where I will bring in some circle dies and some scallop circle dies to use on the cards. I'm also going to be bringing in the Recollections cardstock because it does match the paper pad. And I start out by just taking one of the 6x6 papers that has the tags, and I just cut these down. And I am going to be using these on my cards. I'm not going to use all of them because there's quite a bit, but I am going to be using some of these as sentiments on my cards. And there are 2 sheets of this, but I only cut down one of the sheets. So I do cut these down, just snip off the edges for all of those tags. And here are all of the tags. I also take 1 sheet of the borders. There are 2 of these sheets, and I just cut those border strips because here again these would make for great borders, as well as some of them are sentiments that I will be using on my cards. So one of the sheets in the pad I do cut down, and the other I'm just going to use the reverse side as pattern paper. So let's get started with card 1. I cut the snowman paper down to 4 by 5 1/4. And by the way, you don't have to write down all of these measurements, as I do have them in a coordinating blog post. And you can see that I am going to use, it has such a cute design, so I am going to be using this on the front of a card. And the only thing that I'm going to add to this are maybe some stickers to make a cute scene and a sentiment. That paper is going to be added to a red piece of solid cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. You can see I'm taking the Christmas tree from the sticker pack and adding it there. I think that Christmas tree is so pretty. It actually has some glitter on it. The glitter doesn't come off, it does not rub off, but it has some really pretty sparkle. And I do add a bird there in the snow, and then I use the Merry and Happy sticker and add that for my sentiment. And I think that was just such a super easy card because it already had a really cute snowman scene. And after adding that to the red cardstock, it's added to an A2 size card base, and that completes that card. For my next card, I'm going to be using a card sketch by Paper Play. It's sketch 46 that you see here. Now, some of the cards that I create in this video will be using card sketches and others will not. So I start out by taking this snowman paper and I cut a 2¼ inch stitch circle out of the snowman paper, and notice I cut it at the very top of the paper because I did not want to cut into the snowman itself because I was going to be using that paper for another card. And when that paper is die cut, it is the snowflake red paper that's sitting there on the table, so it was actually the reverse of the other paper. So I also have a red rectangle paper that's cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. The coffee mug hot chocolate paper is cut down to 3 3/4 by 5, and the red small rectangle is cut down to 2 3/8 by 1 5/8, and the pattern rectangle is cut to 2 1/4 by 1 1/2. And I also have a scalloped green circle that is a 2 3/4 inch circle. And I am also going to be using the Have a Holly Jolly Christmas border that I previously cut out. So I'm going to be gluing these pieces together as you see here. Now I want to point out that the card sketch that you see there on the table, it is in portrait, meaning that it is a vertical card sketch, but I'm making my card landscape. So when you look for card sketches on Pinterest or, just doing a Google search, you can use those card sketches and you can modify them to make them your own. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just kind of taking an idea and I'm going with the idea of the card sketch, but I'm just modifying it. So you can see that in the card sketch, it has the larger rectangle underneath the scallop, and I just cut a smaller rectangle and layered it underneath, and it's positioned a little bit different. So this is my version of it. So you can see that the smaller rectangles are layered underneath the scallop, and the red snowflake circle is layered on top of the green scallop. I do add the Have a Holly Jolly Christmas, that border, and I just snip off the excess. And I am going to add a snowman sticker from my sticker pack and add it to that inside of that circle. I add that entire card layer onto the red 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 paper and add that to an A2 size card base, and an A2 size card base measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I add some epoxy dots and that it completes this card. For my next card, I'm going to be making 2 cards, and I'm using the snowman paper. And I'm cutting off the bottom, so I'm cutting off that border. I don't think that border would go great on a card. So here I'm just cutting down the snowman paper so that it is 3 inches tall. And I have a piece of craft cardstock that I cut down to 3 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I'm going to glue that snowman paper onto that craft cardstock, making sure that it's centered on the cardstock. There will be some excess that's extending beyond the edges, and I'm just going to flip that over and just trim off the rest of that snowman paper that's extending beyond those edges. So you can also see that the snowman paper is positioned in the middle of that craft cardstock so that there's a little bit of craft above and below that snowman paper. So here I'm going to glue that on to a red rectangle piece of cardstock, measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I'm going to be using the Merry and Bright border sentiment, and I'm going to glue that towards the bottom of that cardstock sheet. And I want to make sure that the sentiment is visible, so I just trim off the ends, and I think the ends just had a hot cocoa mug on each side, so I just trim that off. And that entire layer is going to go on an A2 size card base in the craft cardstock. Next, I'm going to take some twine and just wrap it around the red part right above that sentiment and tie it in a bow off to the right hand side. And once I have that tied in a bow, I will add a little epoxy dot to the center, and I'll attach it with some hot glue and add some red epoxy dots to the top of that card. And I did make 2 of these cards, and that completes this card. For my next card, I'm actually creating 2 cards with the Moho Monday Sketch 549, and I have a red scalloped circle that measures 2 7/8, a white scallop circle that measures 2 3/8, the red rectangle measures 2 5 3/8, and the green leaf rectangle measures 1 3/4 by 5 3/8. And then I have these larger papers. The red one is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the poinsettia one is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing all of these layers together. The leaf strip is going on that red rectangle strip, and Just make sure that the top and bottom are flush and the sides have a little bit of the red extending from them. And I add those to my poinsettia piece of pattern paper, and if there's any excess hanging off the bottom, I will cut that off. Now if you look at the sketch there on the table, you'll see that it does include a scallop on the right side, which I do not include. So again, you can modify these card sketches to fit your own needs. I do use the tag, and I decide to add the tag with a red ribbon right on top, and I end up having to hot glue that ribbon because it wouldn't stay with the glue. So just add a little hot glue there, and I'm also going to add a little hot glue to an epoxy dot and stick that right in the middle of that ribbon. And that entire layer is going to go on the red rectangle card layer. And once I have that glued to the card layer, that entire layer then will go on an A2 size card base that measures 4¼ by 5½. So here are the two cards that I created with that design, and the one on the right, I did not use the tag from the pattern paper. Instead, I used the tag from the sticker sheets. So that's the only difference. And that completes those cards. For my next cards, this will be cards 7 and 8. I'm making two identical cards. I have a piece of craft for the A2 size card base. I am using a rectangle piece of cardstock that measures 4⅛ by 5�3. The green plaid paper measures 4 by 5¼ and the craft plaid paper measures 1 7/8 by 5¼ I'm also bringing in a scalloped border die from the Stamps of Life, and this actually came in one of their card kits recently, and I cut that out of the red cardstock. So I'm also going to be bringing in the deer from the die cut stickers and the Merry Christmas as well. So here I'm just laying everything out on top of the green plaid paper. So I start by adding some glue to the back of the craft plaid, and then I'm going to add that scalloped border right underneath. Now if you don't have a scalloped border die, you can just cut a small piece of red cardstock so that it layers at the bottom and at the top of that craft piece. So I actually cut two scalloped borders, as you see there, so one at the top and one at the bottom. So here I'm just peeling the adhesive backing off of these die cut pieces and adding them to this card. I love that deer. I think that deer is so pretty, and this actually is perfect for a masculine Christmas card. So I add that entire layer to the A2 size card base and add some red epoxy dots, and I made two of these cards, and that will complete these cards. For my next cards, I'm making two as well. So I'm going to be using the Santa die cut piece, and then these two rectangles. The red one is 4 5/8 by 2 7/8, and the green snowflake is 4½ by 2 3/4. And the sentiment pattern paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and that red larger rectangle is 4 1/4 by 5½. And I'm going to go ahead and add glue to the back of my sentiment paper and add that to the red layer. And I'll do the same with the snowflake paper, so each one of those pattern papers is backed up on a red piece of cardstock. I add the smaller rectangle to the large card layer, and then I take some twine. I have a red twine and a green twine, wrap those around that entire card layer, tie them in a bow off to the right hand side. And then once I have my bow, I just trim off the excess twine. And I'm going to use the Santa, and I'm going to make sure that that twine is positioned right below the wreath where the indentation of his boots is. And because the twine is there and it adds some thickness to that card layer, I am going to add some powder to the back of this adhesive sticker backing just to kind of dry up some of that sticker. And I'm going to add some foam tape instead, because I want to make sure that it's standing up, because if I were just to add it flat onto this card layer, it would not lay flat because of the twine that's there. So I'm adding some double-sided adhesive foam, leaving a space where his boots and the wreath meet so that the twine will sit right underneath that portion. And then I'm going to add that to an A2 size card base. Again, I just want to make sure everything is flat on the back before I add glue, because that twine does add some thickness. And then just add it to that A2 size card base, which is just a white card base. And then I'm going to take my hot glue and add a little epoxy dot to the center of that bow. And that will complete both of my cards. For my next card, I'm using a piece of red cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the Snowman paper measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I have this strip, which is actually leftovers from the previous card, and that is about 1 7/8 inches tall. And I'm going to use that just that extra scrap that I had from the previous card on this card, only this time I'm using the reverse, so I'm going to be using the black side with the snowflakes on it. And I'm adding it to the bottom of that Snowman paper, and I'm just going to trim off the excess. I do bring in another scalloped border die. I really love this scalloped border die. It has a shadow and a layering piece. And again, if you don't have a scalloped border die, you can just use a thin piece of red cardstock just to cover up that gap in where the two papers meet. And then that entire layer is going to go on that red card layer. And I'm bringing in some die cut stickers. So I'm bringing the snowman and the Merry Christmas Christmas tree. So I'm just removing the sticker backing, and I'm going to add both of those there on my card. Now I did decide that with the Christmas tree I want to add some foam just to pop it up. So I do add a powder tool to the back and then add some adhesive foam on the back of that Christmas tree. Peel off the back and then add that there to the front of the card. And then that entire layer is going to go on an A2 size card base. That is just a white card base. And I do add some white epoxy dots, and that completes that card. For my next card, I'm bringing in a piece of red cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I have this snowflake pattern paper that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I have a red scallop circle that measures 4 inches. I wanted to get it large enough to fit this wreath sticker, and I add that wreath sticker right to the front of that scallop. And I add the sticker Holly and Jolly right to the center of that. I also have this plaid paper. This was left over from the deer card that I made previously, and it measures 1 7/8 by 5 3/8. And I'm going to layer that onto a red rectangle that measures 2 by 5 3/8. And when I layer that on to the rectangle, I want to make sure that it's even on the top and bottom with the red cardstock, and only a little bit of the red is showing on the left and right. And that strip is going to go right there in the center of that blue snowflake paper. And if any of that cardstock extends beyond the edge of the blue pattern paper, I just flip it over and just trim off the excess. The wreath is going to go right there in the center, and I am going to add some foam just to give it a little bit of dimension so that it's not so flat on the card. And then I'm going to add the wreath right there to the center of that card front. And then that entire layer is going to go on an A2 size card base. It's just a white card base. And again, an A2 size card is one that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm using a piece of craft cardstock in the A2 size card base. I have a piece of red cardstock that measures 4 by 5 1/4. I also have this snowman paper that measures 1 7/8 by 5 1/4. I'm also bringing in a piece of craft cardstock, which will layer right underneath that snowman paper that measures 2 by 5 1/4. So when I add the snowman paper to the craft cardstock, I just want to make sure a little bit of the craft is showing on the left and right, and then the top and bottom will be even. So I'm going to go ahead and add that layer to my red piece of cardstock, and then I'm going to flip that over and trim off the excess that's hanging there off the top. I'm also going to be bringing in these die cut stickers, so you can see them. You can see the sticker that's lying there on the table. It's the wreath with the house, and I'm also going to be bringing in one of the border strips that I cut from the pattern paper. So I'm going to add some glue to the back of the border strip, add that there towards the bottom of my card layer, and then that will be trimmed off on the back. And then the sticker will go there right on the top. So I'm just going to peel back the sticker backing, add that to the card layer. And then that entire card layer is going to go on my A2 size card base. So I'm just going to add some glue and add that there to my card base. I am going to take a green ribbon and a tag. So I want to add a sentiment to this card. So I'm using one of the tags, Merry and Bright, that came from the pattern paper, and I add that there to the top of that border strip. And then I just take a little green ribbon and tie it in a bow, add some hot glue to the back, and then I'm going to add that to the top of my tag. For my next card, I am going to be bringing in a card sketch from Paper Play, and instead of being portrait, I am going to switch it to a landscape card. So the cardstock pieces that I'm going to be using, I have a red piece of cardstock, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have a blue snowflake paper, which measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I have a red strip that measures 1 3/4 by 4 5/8. I have a green snowflake strip that's 1 5/8 by 4 1/2. I have a green plaid strip that's 7/8 by 5 3/8. And I'm also bringing in 3 of the tags from the paper pad. So I'm adding the snowflake pattern paper to the top of the rectangle strip, the red rectangle strip that is, and just making sure that the red cardstock is showing on all 4 sides. And then I'm going to add some glue to the back of that plaid strip and add it there to the snowflake layer towards the top. And then I'm going to add the snowflake layer with the green snowflake layer right on top of that border. And then I'm going to flip that over, cut off the excess. And that is the strip that the tags are going to go right on top. So I have the 3 tags at the top. Now, the one in the middle, the poinsettia tag, it does not have any sentiment or anything on it. It's pretty blank. So I do end up going in a little bit later. You'll see me go in with a sticker and just adding another poinsettia sticker right to the top of that. But the other 2 tags have sentiments, and I think that's perfect. So I don't need to add any other type of sentiment to this card because it has the 2 already. I do add some foam just to make those stand up. So all 3 tags do have some foam on the back, and that just gives them a little bit of dimension. And I just want to make sure that they are centered evenly, equal distance apart on that strip. Here's where I go in and add that poinsettia sticker, and I love the sticker pad that's in this collection because the stickers have almost like foil or glitter on these stickers, which just gives it a little bit more bling, which I love. And I do add the epoxy dots down there at the bottom and then add that to a card layer, or add that to a card base, and then tie a red ribbon around the top. So you can see that this card is very similar to the sketch, only it is landscape instead of portrait. And that completes this card. For my next card, I have a piece of craft cardstock. That's an A2 size card base. I also have a piece of the red paper that measures 4 by 5 1/4. I also have a piece of craft cardstock that measures 2 1/8 by 5 1/4, and the piece of green plaid paper, which will be layered on top of that craft cardstock, is 2 by 5 1/4. So when I layer those on, I'm going to make sure that the craft cardstock is shown a little bit above and below that panel, and it's going to be flush at the left and right sides. And that panel is going to go on this red piece of cardstock towards the bottom portion of that cardstock layer. I am going to be bringing in the car from the die cut stickers as well as this sticker border. So I add the sticker border underneath the car, and then I also add that sticker banner towards the top of that cardstock layer, and I add the sticker Happy Holidays right on top of that sticker just to add a sentiment there. I remove the adhesive backing from the back of the car and add it right on top of that sticker border, and then add that entire card layer to the A2 size card base in the craft cardstock. And once I do that, I am going to be bringing in some white epoxy dots, and I will add 3 epoxy dots to the top right corner of this card. And that completes this card. For my next card, I'm making 2 of the same. I have a craft A2 size card base. The green layer measures 3 1/8 by 4 1/4, and the red plaid measures 3 by 4 1/4. Then I have some squares. The green square is 3 1/2 by 3 1/2, and the red square is 3 3/8 by 3 3/8. I'm also going to be bringing in the owl sticker with the wreath. So here I'm just layering on the squares. So the red square is going on top of the green square, and then I have the red plaid paper is going to go on top of the green rectangle sheet. And when I add the plaid paper to the solid green, it's going to be horizontal, and I want to make sure that some of the green cardstock shows at the top and bottom of that. And the sides will be flush. So it's going to be flush, it's going straight on that card base, and it's going to be flush with the left side of that card base, and then the right side I'm just going to trim off. And it's going at the top of that card base as well. And then the square, I'm going to add some glue and add that towards the bottom right of that card base. And then I'm going to add that owl, and I'm just going to peel back the backing and add the owl directly on top. Now if you wanted to add some dimension, you can always add some double-sided foam adhesive. And then I'm taking a sticker from the sticker sheet or the sticker pack and adding a sentiment, have a Merry Christmas there at the top. And I'm going to finish off this card with some green epoxy dots. And then I do create a second card using this same scheme. And the only difference with this, with the second card, is that the sentiment changes. So I use a Merry Christmas tag instead. And that completes this card. My next card, I'm also going to be using a card sketch. This is MFT 174, only I'm going to switch it to the landscape position. I seem to continue to switch up the orientation on these card sketches. So I have a red piece of cardstock, 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. That cocoa pattern paper measures 4 by 5 1/4. I do take this plaid strip and I just cut off that white portion at the bottom. I think this plaid strip was just a scrap that I had left over from one of the previous cards. I'm going to lay that strip towards the top of my card layer, and I also have 3 stitched circles that I die cut out of the red cardstock. These stitched circles measure about 1 3/4 inches, and I'm going to add those right along that strip. So just making sure that they're spaced evenly. There's not a whole lot of room on this card layer, so it's going to be a little bit tight, but nevertheless I am adding them, and that's why I went to a landscape position rather than a portrait card, because it definitely would not have fit if I would have done the portrait orientation. And then I just add that entire card layer to the rectangle layer, and I add these stickers, 2 sweaters, and the mittens. I think those look really cute inside those circles. I do take the other piece of pattern paper and I cut out another one of these border sentiments, have a holly jolly Christmas, and I'm going to add that to the bottom of that card layer, and then that entire card layer is going to go on an A2 size card base in white. And that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm using a green snowflake scrap that I had left over from a previous card, and I'm cutting it down to 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. Next, I'm going to take this snowman border, and I'm just going to trim it down to 5 1/4, just so that it's the same size as that green snowflake paper. And that is going to go right there towards the bottom, and these are both going to be layered onto a white piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I did end up trimming a little bit off the top of that border, but in reality you really don't have to, because you can just layer it underneath that snowflake paper, whereas I layered it on top of the snowflake paper. So I go ahead and glue these to my white piece of cardstock, and I also am bringing in a scalloped border. I really love this scallop border die from the Stamps of Life, and unfortunately it's not sold right now at the time of filming on their website because it was part of a card kit. So if you don't own a scallop border die, you can just cut a strip of red cardstock just to add over top of where those 2 pieces of pattern paper meet. So here I add that scallop and I just trim off the end just so that it doesn't extend past that white cardstock. I'm also going to be bringing in this die cut sticker. It's the old-fashioned station wagon. I really love these old-fashioned type cars, like the station wagon in this case, or the old-fashioned pickup trucks. I think those are so cute. And I also add this tag, and I tie a bow with a piece of white twine, and it wasn't staying on there with the glue, so I do add a little drop of hot glue and then add that ribbon right there at the top of the tag. And I do add some hot glue to an epoxy dot and add that to the center. So that car there is going to go on top of that border, and then I'm going to add this card layer right to an A2 size card base in the craft cardstock, and then I go ahead and add some epoxy dots to the center of some of the snowflakes on that pattern paper, and that completes this card. For my next card, I'm also going off a card sketch. It's the Moho Monday 542, which again I'm going to modify just slightly. I have a card base, which is a craft A2 size card base. I have a piece of white cardstock, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. The green cardstock is 4 by 5 1/4. Then I also have another piece of white cardstock, which is 2 5/8 by 5 1/4. Red plaid paper is 2 1/2 by 5 1/4. I also used a scallop circle and die cut a white piece of cardstock, and that is a 3 5/8 scallop circle, as well as a red stitch circle die, and that one is about 2 3/4 inches. So here I'm just going to go ahead and layer these papers on. So here I have my red plaid. It's going on to the white, making sure it's even at the top and bottom, and the sides is going to have a little bit of the white showing. Then I'm going to take my green and layer that on to the white. This one is going to have a white trim all around. And then I'm going to go ahead and start layering my circle onto the scallop circle. Now I want to point out that if you take a look at the card sketch, you can see that the scallop circle is much larger and mine is much smaller, because I wanted to incorporate this sticker that has the leaves with the pine cones. And I also want you to notice that that card sketch has the scallop circle towards the top of the card, and mine is actually going to be at the bottom of the card, because if I incorporate the pine cones with the leaves, I can't include that at the top of the card because it will end up going off the edges of the card. So I had to move it down. So again, use your card sketches if you need inspiration, but please feel free to make modifications to them. You can just make everything your own. So here, after I have glued all of those layers to each other, I'm adding that entire layer then to the A2 size card base in the craft cardstock. Here I'm adding the scallop and then taking the adhesive backing off of the back of this die cut piece and adding it there to my circle. I am going to be bringing in a sentiment. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and that is a sticker from the sticker pack. And I'm just going to add that there to the center, and then I'm going to add some epoxy dots to finish up this card, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm bringing in a Moho Monday sketch, and it looks like this. And the only slight modification I'm making to this is that my circles are going to be a little bit smaller than what is shown on the sketch. So I have a green card base, and that's A2 in size, and then those strips of pattern paper are measured 2 by 5 1/4 each, and those are going to go on that card base directly, and they're just going to lay side by side. I'm also going to be bringing in 2 stitch circles. So the green stitch circle is going to be measured at 2 3/4 inches, and the white stitch circle is 2 1/4 inches. And those will overlap just like you saw there. I am bringing in one of the border strips from the paper pad and just adding it towards the bottom portion of that card. So here, just adding the circles, and then I'm going to add the holly and oh so jolly sentiment from the sticker sheet, as well as the snowman from the sticker sheet, and then adding some twine around the side of the card. And I will tie it in a bow up at the top, add an epoxy dot with some hot glue, and that will complete this card. So here's the card next to the card sketch, and I think I followed that one pretty well this time. For my next card, I am using 3 strips of snowflake paper measured 1.5 by 3 5/8, and I'm going to add those to a piece of white cardstock that's measured 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, just making sure that there's equal white space between each one of those pieces of snowflake paper. I'm going to be bringing in some tags. They're going to be the sticker tags, not the cardstock tags, so it's going to be from the sticker pad. And I'm going to add a sticker in the middle of each one of those snowflake layers. And that middle one, I decide to go in and add a present sticker on top of the tag sticker because it just was a blank tag. And then I add that entire white layer to the top of a rectangle piece of cardstock. It's the red cardstock, measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I do add some that I tied in a bow and add to the top of each one of those sticker tags. And I do add an epoxy dot to the center of each one of those bows, and I just add that with some hot glue to keep them down. And that entire layer is going to go on an A2 size white card base, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I am going to be using a white card base that's A2 in size. I also have a piece of red cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I have these 2 pieces of paper. The leaves paper is 2 5/8 by 5 3/8. The plaid paper is 1 1/4 by 5 3/8. I am bringing in a red scalloped border, as well as a scalloped circle that measures 3 1/4 inches, as well as that Wreath die cut sticker. So here I'm going to add some glue to the back of the plaid cardstock or the plaid pattern paper and add that to the right side of the rectangle cardstock, and then add the leaves paper directly over top of that, making sure that that red border on the back of the cardstock is equal all around the edges. And then I add the scallop directly down the middle where those pattern paper intersect, and then just trim off the excess border that might hang down off the bottom. I'm going to add the scalloped circle there to the card front and add the wreath right directly to the top of that scalloped circle. I am going to be bringing in a Merry and Bright sentiment. It's from one of the stickers on the sticker pack, and I add that there to the top of that card layer, and then add that entire card layer to the front of an A2 size card base, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I am going to be going off of this Moho Monday 538 card sketch, and I'm starting out with a piece of red cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the green leaves paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I have this red strip that measures 2 1/2 by 5 3/8, and the plaid green strip is 2 3/8 by 5 3/8. And those 2 strips will layer on top of each other. Then I have another red strip which is going to measure 1 3/4 by 4 1/8 with the red plaid pattern paper at 1 5/8 by 4 1/8, and those are going to layer on top of each other. Now that strip, it's a little bit smaller than what is shown in the card sketch because I'm going off of some scraps that I just had left over, so I'm using what I had in my stash, so I'm just making it a little bit smaller than what you see there on the measurements on the card sketch. So here I'm just adding those rectangular layers to the leaf pattern paper, and then I'm going to add that entire layer to the red cardstock. And then I'm going to use this sticker from the sticker sheet, add it to my card. Now I want you to notice that the card sketch actually showed a square, but I just chose to use the sticker instead of the square. And I just add some epoxy dots here, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm going to use the same card sketch as the previous card. Again, I'm just going to modify it slightly. So I have a piece of red cardstock at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The green is 4 by 5 1/4. I have the red vertical strip, it's 2 1/8 by 5 1/4. The hot cocoa paper is 2 by 5 1/4. The next red strip is 2 1/8 by 4, and the leaf pattern paper is 2 by 4. So here I'm just going to layer everything on. So the strips are being layered on to, I should say the pattern paper strips are being layered onto the red strips, and they're going to be flush. That one is flush at the top and bottom, with a little bit of red hanging on the sides. And then I'm going to trim off any excess that extends beyond the red solid cardstock. Now I do want to add that I do have a blog, so make sure you go to the blog and take a look. All the cards will be shown, so you can actually print this out on my blog. You can take notes, and you can also view the measurements. I'll have all the measurements in there. Now when I did card kit videos in the past, I didn't usually put the measurements, but I think I might start putting the measurements on my blog. So go ahead and take a look at that. That way you don't have to worry about rushing, because I've heard people tell me, oh, I'm trying to rush to take notes, and you know, maybe sometimes I might go too fast. So this hopefully will help you if you are trying to replicate any of these cards. Okay, so those layers are added to the green cardstock, and then I have a stitched circle, and that stitched circle is a 2 3/4 inch circle. So I add that there to the card front. I do add some stickers from the sticker pack, and then I'm going to add that to the red cardstock sheet that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that will be added to an A2 size card base. So that card is very similar to the previous card. The only difference is that the vertical border, so going up and down, is positioned a little bit different. So on this card it's positioned more to the left. On the previous card it was positioned more to the right. The previous card had a sticker banner on there instead of the square, and on this card it has a circle die cut instead of the square. So that completes this card. For my next card, this is my last card with this set. I'm actually taking a bunch of these strips that I had left over from the paper pad or from different scraps that I've cut down, and I'm just adding these strips to a piece of red cardstock that's measured 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I didn't have any real pattern. I was just having some extend off the edges on the left and off the right, trying to make sure that they were evenly spaced throughout that piece of cardstock. And what I'm going to do is just trim off the excess. So this is a fun way of just using up some of the scraps that you have left over from your paper pads. So once I have all these adhered, I'm just going to flip this over, trim off all this excess, and all of that excess is garbage. There's no way I'm keeping that. I take this sticker from the sticker pack, trim it down. Actually, I put it on some cardstock and then just trim away that cardstock because I didn't want to have a sticky back. And then I add that to a red piece of cardstock and just trim off a little bit of it, making sure that there is a little border shown on all 4 edges. I do put some foam underneath that and then add that up on the center of that card layer, and then that entire card layer is going to go on an A2 size card base. And that was a pretty easy card, wouldn't you say? So that completes this card, and that completes all 26 cards that I made with the Recollections Save Freeze collection. If you would like to see me make more videos like this with paper pad collections, with ephemera, or just with 6x6 paper pads, leave me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Also, let me know what paper pads or paper companies you would like to see me work with. And if you like this video, go ahead and give me a like, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more card making inspiration. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.